This is Will Stewart from onlinechesslessons.net, and I'm taking a look at a recent game from round 4 of the second Women's Grand Prix in 2011, held in Shenzhen, China. And this is a match between Zhu Chen with the white pieces versus Wenjun playing black. So Zhu Wenjun, I think she's like 20 years old, had a pretty hot year. I think she won a tournament, a female tournament earlier this year in China at the Hangzhou Women Grandmaster Tournament. So she's playing well, and she's responding to Chen's D4 here with the King's Indian defense. King's Indian defense has been extremely popular at the top levels. You know, you name it. You want to say maybe going back to Gligoric and Bronstein, or if you want to say Fischer, Kasparov. You know, these days maybe you want to say Nakamura. Just an extremely popular defense because it leads to very sharp positions like we're going to see in this game. So black plays e5, and really, you know, you got a couple of options here. You can go to c5, maybe try to go towards a more Benoni style structure. Some people even play c6, I think. Knight c6, knight d7 is also possible. e5 is just direct. So castles, knight c6 now, and white decides to close the center. And black is just going to be rerouting this knight towards the kingside to help out with the attack. So a couple of maneuvers here. You know, black is trying to play f5, and white is going to play f3. So it's becoming pretty clear after f4, black is going to be going for a kingside attack. And white is most likely going to be trying to play some kind of c5, possibly b4, so, you know, trying to generate some counterplay on the queen side. So Chen starts with bishop d2 here. And sometimes in this kind of structure, the bishop has you know, if white has played bishop e3, the bishop ends up on f2. But from d2, there's an interesting maneuver we're going to see later in the game. So g5, and maybe it's also a little bit faster. So knight g6 is pretty standard stuff, and now with c5, offering up a pawn sacrifice here, which Wenjun decides to decline. Probably just, you know, didn't want her position to get messed up with this nasty pawn structure, weakening the e5 square. Without going into complications too much there. So knight f6, and black is just getting ready to jam on the queen side. No questions asked. And white has got good play. You know, knight b5 is definitely showing that. a6, not really a good move here. Probably just, you know, simply knight a3. Knight's going to come to c4 and have a lot of pressure and influence on the position. Also, the bishop a5 after a6 would be stronger later. So knight b5 and rook f7, pretty common move in the King's Indian defense. Little lateral defense can also come switch to help out the attack on the king. And here's the idea. This is the maneuver. I thought was pretty cool. I hadn't really seen this too much before. With this bishop d2 line, you know, the bishop busting out, you know, kicking out to the queen side, and pretty much forcing black to play b6. So now Chen tries to sack a piece here, which was probably a good idea not to accept it, as white is just killing it here. So instead, Wenjun pragmatically just, you know, takes the pawn. So bishop e1, also possible. I mean, bishop b4, but black is probably going to play bishop f8 anyway to clear space for the rook. So really no point in bishop b4. So bishop e1 does have a point, threatening knight b4 to c6. So Wenjun reacts immediately with a6, kicking the knight back, and a5. So a good reaction. So now, you know, reround the bishop, trying to line up on that weak b6 pawn. Black goes back to make space for the rook, and b4. So as stated before, you know, taking here, while it would open the rook on the a file, the c6 square, this would also allow white's bishop to infiltrate. That's going to be tough to defend for black. So black really, and you know, just logically here, I mean, black is trying to develop a kingside attack. She has got all her pieces on the kingside. Just trying to play g4, probably g3, maybe roll the h-pawn as well. So it's, you know, pretty simple, but easier said than done. As white has, through really, you know, active and accurate play, has achieved significant pressure on the black queen side and significant weaknesses for her pieces to come in. So black's got to be careful. But just logically, I mean, you don't want to move pieces. You don't want to move anywhere on the side of the board you're being attacked in this kind of situation. It's all about just throwing the pieces at the king. Defending is just simply not going to work. White's position is already too strong on the queen side. So knight b5, putting some pressure, and now g4. So now the game is really getting interesting after rook c6. And here's something you don't really see too often in the King's Indian. The rook switching to b7 to defend this b6 pawn. But it was just necessary in this position. And the rook can still, you know, kick it back in one move. So now white has got a super strong rook on c6 and also a lot of pressure on the c file. So rook c1, she's tripled up, forces bishop d7. And with a4, white is just more than happy to sacrifice an exchange to get a passed pawn. And a4, I mean, you know, the b6 pawn will probably drop in the future. Maybe, you know, if knight b2 and knight to c4 is necessary, the b6 pawn is probably going to drop. So a4, just kind of getting ready for that moment to, you know, the pawn's just going to be that much closer to queening. So here, when Wenjun decides to trade, take the pawn here, maybe to introduce at least a little bit of pressure, and that's going to tie white's queen to a4. And now king h1 and king to h8. So maybe she's actually thinking about taking this rook and doesn't want any checks against her king if the position opens up. So now taking the rook is just going to bring this knight in, or with pawn takes. So either way, white here with g3 is, or black with g3 is really just trying to bust through on the king side. And now with the bishop back to f2, leaving this pawn there, because the pawn's really going to be in black's way of her attack. So now h4, and just straightforward stuff by black. She's defended temporarily on the queen side, mainly b6 and d6. And so she's ready to start generating a more counterplay and more of a dangerous attack on the king side. So queen g5, and she's, you know, this is kind of what a4 was for earlier. White was kind of waiting for this, because otherwise black's going to need to get the queen in the attack. And by leaving the queen side, the b6 pawn is hanging. So really going all or nothing here. And, you know, it's a crazy position. I mean, white's got a lot of pieces on the queen side. And this pawn is looking pretty good. Meanwhile, black's got a pretty much worthless bishop on f8. The knight on e8 is not really doing anything. The rook on a8 is way out of the game. But black's got, you know, she's got an attack here because all of white's pieces are you know, way stuck on the queen side. So it's a very dangerous position. So h3, knight h4, trying to build some pressure. I guess, you know, knight b4, the idea with knight b4 to c6 was so that, I guess, to play a5. So now this bishop can stay defending the king side if bishop takes b5, just to make a note. So a5, and maybe, I don't know, a5, I mean, I guess you kind of got to play it because this bishop and the queen need to stay defending that pawn. And maybe rook takes a4 was a possibility. So knight f6, the knight is finally, you know, waking up. And queen f2, maybe, I don't know, queen f2 makes a lot of sense. But maybe white should have, if there was anything else to try. I mean, the problem is, you know, queen f2, okay, so now she's going to be threatening to take h3. I guess it forces takes, and now knight h5. And this pawn really isn't in black's way at all anymore. So knight c7, and maybe this was the decisive mistake, if you can say that. But I mean, Wenjun response here was pretty spectacular. So started with check, queen h5, a nice move with a couple of, you know, threatening mate in one right here. So king g1, and now bishop h3. This is a pretty sick move. So I guess the idea, I never use a computer to analyze. I mean, I guess the idea is if takes, king here is forced, and knight g5, and I'm pretty convinced. You know, black has only sacrificed, I guess here she's down a piece. She's only sacrificed a piece, and the rook on A8, but it's not that important. So the material is still close to equal. And, you know, any rook H1 stuff, black can just take it, and still H3 is going to drop. It's not going to work. Bishop D7, trying to keep an eye. And I think black's attack is just pretty simple. Just take this, play F3, and it's just going to break through. So pretty nice little bishop H3 was crazy. So here, Chen tried knight takes A8, and after takes to sack the queen, and instead of taking the queen, because after takes, black's attack has evaporated, just about, and white's probably going to be able to queen the pawn. So instead, knight takes F3, not taking the queen. Because after the following sequence of checks, king F1, now knight D2, and when I was looking at it the first time, I thought, well, why not king E1? You know, even a perpetual check, which I don't even think it is, because the king... Okay, maybe it's a perpetual, but still, I mean, king E1, why not? You know, if it's a perpetual. And then I looked a little deeper, and I saw F3. And so then I realized the white queen has nowhere to go. There's absolutely no squares on the G file. There's nowhere to go. And if queen G1, now knight F3, winning the queen, and black's just going to be able to ton of material with a super dangerous attack still. So okay, so king E1, maybe not so good. So Chen tried king G1. But the two knights with the queen combination is just too much. Even though black is down a clear rook and white's about to queen and make another queen. So knight G5, nice little tactic. If takes, you know, simply knight F3 is going to be a fork. Chen tries rook C3 is, I can't really think of too many, you know, better defensive moves here. But the problem is it allows queen D1 check. And possibly if you looked at this with Fritz, but I don't think white has any way out. Black's, these pawns are way too strong. The knight's working with the queen, I don't think so. So she tried rook C3, and a nice accurate end by Wenjun. Knight F1, forcing pretty much king H1, and now knight E3, she resigned. So what a psycho game. I guess, you know, king H2, even knight G4 would win the queen. Yeah, would win the queen here. And queen G1 is just queen F3. So queen G1, and if king here also, queen H3 is mate. So anyway, a really, what a psycho game by Wenjun. She's playing some incredible chess. I believe she finished third in this tournament overall at the end. So definitely got to keep an eye on her. This is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and thanks for tuning in.